He was known as the Angel of Death, a chilling moniker for a man entrusted with caring for the sick and vulnerable. Charles Edmund Cullen, a nurse with a gentle demeanor, hid a terrifying secret. He was one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. For over 16 years, Cullen moved from hospital to hospital, leaving a trail of death in his wake. His victims, often already frail and fighting for their lives, never suspected the darkness that lurked beneath his calm exterior. This is the story of how a caregiver became a killer, and how a system designed to protect the vulnerable failed to stop him. Cullen's case sent shockwaves through the medical community and beyond. How could someone entrusted with saving lives betray that trust so completely? How could he evade detection for so long, operating undetected within the very institutions designed to heal? This essay delves into the chilling case of Charles Cullen, exploring his troubled past, his descent into madness, and the systemic failures that allowed his killing spree to continue for far too long. Charles Edmund Cullen's entry into the world was unremarkable, but the shadows of his future darkness were already present. Born in 1960 in West Orange, New Jersey, Cullen was the youngest of 8 children in a working-class family. His father, a bus driver, died when Charles was just an infant, leaving his mother to shoulder the burden of raising a large family alone. The Cullen household was often strained, marked by financial hardship, and the constant struggle to make ends meet. Within this tumultuous environment, young Charles struggled to find his place. Described as quiet and introverted, he became a target for bullies, both at school and within his own family. He retreated further into himself, finding solace in solitary pursuits and exhibiting a disturbing fascination with death. At the tender age of 9, Cullen attempted suicide for the first time, a desperate cry for help that went largely unheeded. This early trauma, coupled with the instability of his home life, laid the foundation for the deep-seated psychological turmoil that would plague him throughout his life. The teenage years brought further tragedy for Cullen. His mother, the one constant in his turbulent life, died in a car accident. This devastating loss left him reeling, amplifying his feelings of isolation and abandonment. Cullen claimed that the hospital treating his mother had treated him with indifference, failing to inform him of her passing in a timely manner, and cremating her body without his consent. This experience fueled a growing resentment towards the medical profession, planting the seeds of a twisted vendetta that would later manifest in the most horrific ways. Cullen's mental state continued to deteriorate. He dropped out of high school and drifted aimlessly, haunted by a sense of hopelessness and despair. Suicide attempts became a recurring theme, a desperate attempt to escape the torment that consumed him. His cries for help, however, were met with indifference or brushed aside as the erratic behavior of a troubled young man. The lack of understanding and support only served to deepen his isolation, pushing him further down a path of self-destruction. In 1978, seeking structure and a sense of purpose, Cullen enlisted in the United States Navy. He was assigned to the USS Woodrow Wilson, a nuclear submarine carrying ballistic missiles. The rigid discipline and confined environment of submarine life, however, did little to alleviate his inner turmoil. Cullen found himself once again an outcast, subjected to relentless hazing and ridicule from his shipmates. The pressure of this hostile environment, coupled with the immense responsibility of his duties, pushed him to the brink. One particularly disturbing incident foreshadowed the darkness to come. Cullen was discovered in the missile control room, fully clothed in surgical garb, his hands gloved, staring intently at the control panel. This bizarre act, while dismissed as a prank by his superiors, hinted at a deeper disturbance lurking beneath the surface. Cullen's mental health continued to decline, culminating in several more suicide attempts. Finally, in 1984, after a series of psychiatric evaluations, he was discharged from the Navy. The discharge papers cited a personality disorder, a label that failed to capture the true extent of his psychological torment. After his discharge, Cullen enrolled in Mountainside Hospital School of Nursing in New Jersey. It seemed an unlikely career path for someone so troubled, yet he excelled in his studies, even being elected class president. His classmates described him as quiet and unassuming but competent. Beneath this veneer of normalcy, however, a sinister transformation was taking place. Cullen's fascination with death, once a morbid curiosity, was morphing into something far more sinister, a desire for control, a belief that he held the power of life and death in his hands. In 1987, Cullen began working at St. Barnabas Medical Center, marking the beginning of his reign of terror. It was here that he claimed his first victim, a patient suffering from AIDS. Cullen administered a lethal dose of medication, later claiming he was merely easing the man's suffering. This act, however, marked a turning point. Cullen had crossed the line, and the thrill of power, the intoxicating feeling of control over life and death, proved addictive. Over the next 16 years, Cullen moved from hospital to hospital, leaving a trail of death in his wake. His victims, often elderly or already critically ill, were easy targets. He used his access to medications to administer fatal doses, often choosing drugs that were difficult to detect and could be attributed to natural causes. Despite a pattern of suspicious deaths occurring during his shifts, Cullen managed to evade detection time and time again. The reasons for this systemic failure are complex and multifaceted. Hospitals, often more concerned with avoiding scandal and potential lawsuits, were reluctant to investigate allegations against staff. Cullen's quiet demeanor and ability to blend in worked in his favor. He was, in many ways, the perfect predator, hiding in plain sight within a system ill-equipped to recognize, let alone stop him. While Cullen's professional life was a carefully constructed facade, his personal life was crumbling. He married Adrienne Taub in 1987 and they had 2 daughters together. The marriage, however, was troubled from the start. Adrienne described Cullen as controlling and emotionally distant, prone to fits of rage and bizarre behavior. He neglected his family, often disappearing for hours, his whereabouts unknown. In 1993, Adrienne filed for divorce, citing Cullen's erratic behavior and domestic abuse. The collapse of his marriage pushed Cullen further into despair, fueling his already unstable mental state. He became even more withdrawn, seeking solace in his work, where he could exert control over life and death, a power denied to him in his personal life. Cullen's killing spree might have continued unchecked if not for the courage and determination of Amy Loughran, a fellow nurse at Somerset Medical Center. Loughran, initially a friend and confidant of Cullen's, grew suspicious of his activities. She noticed the pattern of deaths on his shifts, the missing medications, and his unusual interest in certain patients. Despite initial skepticism from authorities and fear for her own safety, Loughran agreed to wear a wire, engaging Cullen in conversations that ultimately provided crucial evidence against him. Loughran's decision to come forward was not an easy one. She risked her career, her reputation, and potentially even her life. However, driven by a sense of duty to her patients and a desire to stop Cullen's reign of terror, she put her own fears aside. Her actions were instrumental in bringing an end to one of the most horrific killing sprees in medical history. In December 2003, Charles Edmund Cullen was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. During his interrogation, he confessed to killing at least 40 patients, though experts believe the true number of victims could be far higher, perhaps even exceeding 400. Cullen claimed his actions were motivated by a desire to end suffering, but this explanation rang hollow, failing to account for the randomness of his victims and the sheer scale of his crimes. In 2006, Cullen was sentenced to 11 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. His capture and imprisonment brought an end to his reign of terror, but it did little to ease the pain and suffering he inflicted on countless families. The case of Charles Cullen remains a chilling reminder of the potential for evil to lurk behind even the most trusted facades. It serves as a stark warning about the importance of vigilance, the need for robust safeguards within healthcare systems, and the courage to speak out against wrongdoing, even when the cost of silence seems unbearable.